Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the channel for our second and final installment of whatever I'm deciding to call this series. Declutter decks that are new looking for a new home and the decks I use instead. I just filmed my first installment of this like 5 seconds ago, so I don't have the name yet, but you'll know. If you didn't know, there's another part. Go check it out. So yeah, basically I have decks in my collection. I hate that word. In my library. I'm trying to like rewire my brain to not use the word that I hear everybody else use, and sometimes it's very difficult. Anyway, I have a bunch of decks that are looking for a new home, and I was really inspired by Dawn Michelle's video where she did a declutter of like this or that, and I thought it would be fun to show you the decks that are looking for a new home, which you can purchase and adopt. In the description box below, there's a link to my website. You can see all the ones that are available there if you would like to give something a new home. And along with that, I'm going to show you the deck that I have in my library that I use instead for a similar purpose. All right, without further ado, let's just jump into it. This is my kombucha. Those of you wondering, it was a lot fuller when I started the first installment. This first deck that we're going to look at is the Journey to the Goddess Realm Oracle deck. This is the only goddess deck that I own, and I have yet to find a goddess deck that I really enjoy. This is the one that has come the closest. If I were to recommend a goddess deck, it would be this one. I think there's a good variety of diversity from different pantheons or sectors of different traditions and cultures, etc., represented here. I'm not the authority and not very well versed in those things, so take that with a grain of salt. It could be completely wrong. But in my experience, there are a lot of goddesses here that I recognize from different places in the world, and I do appreciate that. The artwork is interesting, but it's not terrible, except for this one. Really, really not a fan of that one. And in terms of the guidebook, love this collie. In terms of the guidebook, it gives you like just enough to go on. It's good. The only reason that this is up for looking for a new home is because while there are a few depictions, like I love this picture of Caradwen, I think that's how you say that. There were other ones that I enjoyed. There are also a lot of goddesses that I do work with. I like the Kali one. There are goddesses that I do work with where it just doesn't go with how I view them. One in particular is Baba Yaga. I don't know if she's here. She is. This really doesn't matter. I don't know why I'm bothering to pull this out for you, but I always like to hear about people's practices. So I enjoy these depictions. So if I'm gonna like put a goddess card on the altar, if I'm working with a particular goddess, then for these three, like that's okay. I probably wouldn't use Isis because I have the Isis Oracle, but like these two, like yeah. However, goddesses that I work with a lot, Inanna Ishtar, Baba Yaga, Hecate, Gaia, like Earth. These are not depictions that I like of how I see them, and I don't want to put them on the altar. Like, they're not bad, they're just not how I experience the energy of that particular goddess. So it doesn't work on a practical level for me that way. However, if you don't know anything about any of these goddesses and you want just like a little taste, something to work with, I don't think this is a bad option. There are worse options in my opinion. It does give you, like, here we have Baba Yaga. It tells you who Baba Yaga was, the keywords and the shadow of that goddess, which, you know, I think is a good thing to know if you're going to work with them. So basically, it is one that I use. It's one I've used for a long time. It's one I enjoy. It is looking for a new home because I feel like as I have worked with a lot of these goddesses and developed a relationship with them, the depictions don't fit my view of the goddess, but this is definitely one that I would recommend. All that to say, this one's looking for a new home. The deck that I use instead, now I do not have another goddess deck as I explained. However, if I want to work with some type of energy that's, say, reminiscent of that, if you, like when you're working with goddesses, I really enjoy this Angels and Ancestors Oracle. This is kind of like earthy, angels, archetypes, muses kind of thing. Again, it's not a direct translation, not as good of a translation as some of my other examples have been, but I do really enjoy this deck. I enjoy the cardstock. I enjoy the illustrations. I enjoy the variety of archetypes that are contained within it. There are some from different cultures, but there are some like generic ones, right? Like we have the sage, we have a guardian of protection, we have the peacekeeper, a traveler, the seer, star ancestors. So it does, she wolf, love that. Earth mother. See, this is much more like Gaia to me than the other card. But anyway, this is a deck that I use a lot, that I really love. At one point, I thought I was going to get rid of this because I was like, I'm not a Hay House girl. But honestly, I really do love this deck. It's fantastic. There was a period in my life where I was using it and I just like had to like distance myself from it and get over that. But now we're back on it. I use it for my readings. I use it for client readings. I use it for collective readings. It's an all-around great deck. So, Journey to the Goddess Realm Oracle is looking for a new home, and this is the deck that I use instead. Ironically, we have another goddess deck. If you watched my original deck declutter videos from earlier this year, you will not be surprised to see this one on there. I had decided to keep it in case I wanted to work with it. We're done. I like the book in this deck. It's supposed to be this this deck for embodying the erotic divine feminine, which I am all about. However, I guess my flavor of eroticism and divine feminine is a little different than perhaps the average person, because nothing in this deck screams erotic divine feminine to me. It's just, and there's about 8,000 snakes, and I can't with the snakes. However, she has goddesses as a lot of the major arcana cards, which I do enjoy. She kept the suits, so we still have like wands, cups, pentacles, which I really enjoy. She did rename the court cards to, oh gosh, Witch. I'm like looking for another one. Witch, Maiden. See, snakes everywhere. Anyway, there's witches, there's maidens, there's a couple of the other ones. Apparently they're all clumped together. It's not a badly done deck. I understand why a lot of people were hyped about it. If you like this type of art, if you're not worried about snakes, if you find roses and pink, vomity, kind of flowery stuff to be the flavor of erotic, divine, feminine energy that you like, I'm not throwing any shade. This is just not... It's not how I experience that energy. The guidebook is really nice. I do like it for the card meetings because it kind of takes you out of the box and gets you thinking about the tarot in like a different way, but doesn't stray too far from the meaning. So if this is your jam, I do recommend this deck. However, this is not my jam for this topic. What I use instead is the Witch's Tarot by Burning Paper Hearts. This deck, to me, is erotic, divine, feminine. Maybe not erotic per se, but there are a lot of bare female forms in this deck, which I think are done very tastefully and speak to a lot of like raw power. Like, that is sexy. Like, that is a great strength card. You get the elements. It's like, it's raw, it's animalistic, it's feminine, it's... I mean, how more divine do you get than like being naked in nature? Like, can anybody tell me? There are extra cards in here which have the goddesses, which have different phases. So like the maiden, mother, crone. So you still get the same kind of flavor, but, oh, and the moon phases. I do hate that the cardstock sticks together, but it is super thin, which you need for such a thick deck, which I do appreciate. But if I want, like, is she not like sensual? I don't know. For me, this is the vibe. This is divine, erotic, feminine energy. And I really enjoy this deck. That is the Witch's Tarot by Burning Paper Hearts. Again, I probably don't use it as much as I would like to because I can't stand how it's so hard to flip through, like you just saw, because of the rose petally finish. But it riffles like a dream because the cardstock is so thin, and I'm obsessed with the images, and this isn't supposed to be a love story about this deck, but apparently it is. So, Goddess of Love Tarot by Gabby Herstick. Looking for a new home, Witch's Tarot, I use instead. Next, we have another Oracle deck. This is the Witching Hour Oracle by Lorraine Anderson. Now, this is a rock pull deck. I do enjoy it. It found me for a reason. I did purchase this on the back of my upsetness with them changing the artist and the blurbs on the bottom of the cards for the Seasons of the Witch decks, which I have a whole rant about and will not be purchasing any of the ones after that. I think they're all out now, but anyway, that's a different rant for a different time. This deck is written by the same person who wrote the Seasons of the Witch guidebooks. So I was like, all right, let's just check this out. And this is a very interesting deck because in the beginning she explains how the deck was inspired by their own like spiritual awakening witchcraft journey. So it does have a logical progression, which I do appreciate. The cards are interesting in the fact that there are keywords. There is a tarot companion, so it will say like this card is associated with a certain tarot card. And I do like that because that's something I do in my own practice. Sometimes I'll pull an oracle card and be like, oh, this is like the Four of Swords or whatever, right? So this actually has that in the guidebook, which is cool. You get a nice depiction. I'm just now realizing. I'm going to talk about this card in a second. As a description, and then it has companion cards, meaning if you pulled like this card and this, if you pulled this card with any of these cards, it means something different. It like changes the meaning, which is cool. Like these are all things that I do naturally when I read. So it's cool to have it in a guidebook, just kind of thought out by somebody else to see what someone else thought. This prying eyes card is the only card that I pretty much get in this deck. There it is again. I don't particularly feel drawn to this art style. It's just not my thing. The keywords are good. It does have a good mixture of shadow cards and light cards, which I do appreciate in a deck. I think that is absolutely required. I'm not a love and light only kind of person. I'd like to look at kind of the darker side of things, the yin and yang, the dark and light. Anywho, again, topic discussion for another thing. I think this is a great deck. Takes you on the journey. The guidebook's great. The keywords are great. It covers a large array of different topics. However, this card, the Prying Eyes, is the only card that I've gotten pretty much from this deck since I got it again, at least if not over a year ago. And I'm just over it. Like, I am over it. I can pull out all the cards I've gotten from this deck, and most of the ones that were different from that card are ones that I have gotten in collective readings. And it just, I understand it has an important message for me, but I've gotten the message. I'm complete. We are complete. The Witching Hour Oracle is looking for a new home. I hope that you get a different card from it than I do. The decks that I like to use instead, I had two. I couldn't pick. The Madame Endor's Fortune cards and the Witch's Moon Magic. So this, when I'm thinking about the Witching Hour Oracle, I think about like, you know, your evolution on your witch path, right? And it has that kind of like light and dark energy. And of course there's that like trickster energy in there with the Prying Eyes. I apologize if that was loud. This is one of those really fun older decks. I don't even know if you can get this anymore. This is copyright 2003. Of course I say old and I'm older than that. But anyway. What was I trying to say? This, I feel, has some of those fun, like, old school witchy vibes to it. Like, you have Egyptian stuff. You have some of the, like, more game nighty kind of stuff. You have, like, shields and the minstrel. The minstrel, not the minstrel, excuse me. The siren, the moon, the seer. Again, this isn't like a direct translation, but like you have the elements, you have some different like goddesses. It's just some animals. Like it's a really cool all around like witchy feeling deck. It's a little bit cheesy, but in the best kinds of ways. And it's just really fun to play with. And it is cool to use amongst like a tarot card reading. I don't know what, now that I'm like sharing it with you, I don't know exactly how that translates, but this is the deck that I would use over the Witching Hour Oracle. I guess it can also kind of deliver some of those like harsher messages, those like direct, you know what I mean? This other deck, the Witch's Moon Magic Oracle, this probably is a better comparison. This deck, here's the backs, here's the edges. The Witching Hour Oracle is edged like it comes that way. I didn't do it, just so you know. It has all different aspects of the witch's path. There's light, there's dark, although the imagery is definitely like skewed towards the dark. We have like the harvest moon, cultivating imagination with like air magic, full moon, cold moon, desolate. There are some different goddesses. There's like, here we go, repellent magic. This would probably be the equivalent to like that kind of watching you card. And I don't really get this card ever, so. This is just a really, the artwork is kind of cheesy, but I do prefer this artwork over the Witching Hour Oracle. It's just a personal preference. And again, I like the mixtures of like light and dark, different aspects. I like the different aspects of the craft that you can think about. There's different types of magic. There's different moon rituals. It's just an all around good, like witchy magic deck. And the guidebook does have interesting things that you don't usually find in guidebooks, kind of like the Witch's Hour. So you have like a little poem, you have the guidance of the card, you have a ritual, you have powers, and you have like different associations. And they pack a lot in like the little book. So the Witching Hour Oracle is looking for a new home, and these are the two decks that I would use instead. All right, so these next three decks let me start again. These next three decks that are looking for a new home are all the Jasmine Beckett Griffith artwork Big Eyed Girl decks. I have 2 oracles and a tarot. If you're only here for which decks I'm decluttering and you don't like Jasmine Beckett Griffith artwork, thank you so much for being here. I won't waste your time. Have a beautiful day. However, if you want to see what decks I use instead, you're more than welcome to stick around. The first deck is the Alice in Wonderland Oracle. Now, I'm actually a fan of this deck. I do enjoy the deck. I do enjoy the guidebook. This it's like a gentle gut check deck. I actually think I did a video review on this deck. One thing that drives me crazy is this thing, how the artwork doesn't match all the cards. It is because the artwork was done independently of the cards, of course, as with all Jasmine Beckett Griffith artwork. I've been talking for too long at this point. The keywords are amazing. They really call you on your stuff. It's a really great deck. If I need that kind of Alice in Wonderland vibe where like things are a little distorted, things are upside down, things are not quite right, and I need like a gut check, I need you to tell it to me straight, I need you to help me make sense of what's going on. If I need that kind of energy, I have a different deck that I reach for first over this one. And because I'm not like married to the artwork, I more enjoy the deck because of that feature of it, like the actual functionality of the deck. Because I use this other deck over it, this one doesn't get a lot of love. So she is looking for a new home. Excuse me, that was awful. There are actual excerpts from the original Alice in Wonderland text in this book, in the guidebook, which is like chef's kiss. Really appreciate that they did that. The deck that I like and use instead is the Visions in the Liminal Space by Akara Winter and Kaylee, not going to butcher the name. This is an indie deck. I don't know if you can get it anymore. I will try to find it. I believe there's a independent shop, A Riffle in Time. She also has a YouTube channel here. I will try to leave her shop linked if she still has some of these. I know she did at one point, but this is that same vibe that I was describing. Like, this is, things are upside down. I'm in a world I don't quite understand. I don't understand what's going on, and I need you to help give it to me straight in a way that I can like understand. This is this deck. It is the liminal space. It talks about the in-between, and there are just, it just bends your mind in the most beautiful way. It's like sassy and riddly, and half the time you don't know what kind of madness it's talking about, but if you need that touch of madness to make sense of what's happening in your life, then it's like so clear. Does that make any sense? So this isn't a deck that I'm using all the time. Like, this is a deck for a very specific frame of mind. But if I'm in that I am Alice in Wonderland frame of mind and I need some friggin' help, this deck just gets me. There's something so I can't quite put it into words. I really can't. It's just a great deck. If you can like bend your mind in that way, highly recommend Visions in the Liminal Space. The guidebook leaves pretty much everything to be desired. It's almost non-existent, but it does give you enough to like understand what the card is trying to say most of the time. So Visions in the Liminal Space is the deck I like for this. Alice in Wonderland Oracle, still highly recommend, still enjoy, just I don't reach for it over this one. So it might as well get some love elsewhere. This next one, Beautiful Creatures Tarot. This is another deck where if you're in the market for this type of thing, it is well done. This deck's personality, first off, box, terrible. Second, gilding comes janky. Like, I haven't used this very much. It came out of the box with these already worn edges. I don't know if that's picking up, but just if you're going to adopt this deck from my website, then I want you to know that. The guidebook is well done. I really do appreciate it. It gets a lot of grief from people for some reason because it's written by a young man, but I don't see why that has anything to do with anything. So the core cards are each associated with a zodiac sign, which I think is a nice touch and doesn't overpower the card. You still get the actual title of the card. So it's well done. However, the personality of this deck, let me tell you. Most of the images match the like words on it. I have to give them that. That's done really well. However, because I think it's because of the keywords on this mixed with like the big-eyed girls, it does lean a little more moody. Like, the keywords aren't happy-go-lucky. Like, there's also a couple extra cards. The keywords aren't happy-go-lucky. They're serious. And they hurt. They hurt. This is a moody, bitchy teenager. Like, angsty teen vibes all the way. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just how it reads. And it works really well for the deck. Like, the personality of this deck matches the deck. Like, there's no shade in the way that it delivers messages. It's going to give it to you straight. It's going to be angsty and rude about it. And it's going to call you on your BS. And normally I like that from a deck. However, if I'm going to reach for a deck because I am in kind of this angsty, bitchy mood, let's say, I don't want this deck. Like, if I want a reading that reminds me of the torment that is being a teenager, I don't want this one. I reach for this one instead. Tarot de la Nuit. Maybe this just tells you something about the kind of teenager I was. I don't know. I was a very in my feels, dramatic, teenager. But for me, it was all internal, or at least it felt that way. And all of that, like, moody, angsty, fantasy vibes, again, had this internal experience with it. And there's something about this deck, the Tarot de la Nuit. It doesn't make the best tarot deck. Like, I'm not like pulling this out to do readings on any type of regular basis. But if I'm for some reason in a space where I need some type of shadow work to do with these more delicate, seems like the end of the world, super romanticized, storybook feel kind of vibes, I'm going to reach for this deck. There's warriors, there's mermaids, there's like sexy looking ladies of the night. Like, that is teenage me. Not this big-eyed girl, whatever. Like this. That was, yeah. So, I don't really know where I'm going with this, except for the point that if I need a deck that's like speaking to my inner teenager, I need this deck, and I need it to tell me a story that I can think about in terms of metaphor, which this guidebook does. Even though it's little, it's done very well. That I can use to work through my own inner issues. Also, like, I love that this King of Swords looks like The Witcher. I would use this deck. I don't need a little annoying, overly dramatic, in-your-face, angsty, big-eyed girl telling me things that I already know. If that's your vibe, again, no shade. This deck would love to have a new home. So that is the Beautiful Creatures Tarot. Last but not least, Live Impure Oracle. This is a deck this is my second copy of this deck. I got one when I was a teenager, I think. Late teens, early 20s maybe. 2014. Okay, so I was definitely in college. Was definitely out of high school. Anyway, feels like that long ago. This, again, has that moody, angsty, wounded teenager feeling to it. And calls you out in the most absolutely confusing way. The guidebook is a walking contradiction. It will tell you 3 different messages within the same card description, and they'll be like the opposite of each other. It bends my mind. The reason that I repurchased this deck was because I had memories of using it for my now husband. Way before we even ever started dating, we were friends, and the day that I got my first copy of this deck, I actually did a reading for him with it. So I purchased this again. I pieced and parted out the last one, used it as bookmarks and in craft projects. Bought it again for the nostalgia. Remembered why I never used the other one, and it was a silly repurchase. We're married now. We have other decks we use together. I don't need this. I don't reach for it. Angsty teenage shadow work. That's what this is. But it's less whiny. This one's not whiny. It's just, it hits home in a very confusing way. I'm not really selling you on that one, am I? That one's looking for a new home. The one that I like and use instead, if I'm going to do this more shadow work energy in themes, like, so this one, let's go back to this for a second. This one has themes. So it's like the creator, the immortal, family and pure pressure, death will come, being mortal, death rights, saying goodbye, courtesy, feeling like you have to be polite with good manners, rebellion, revolution, natural, being authentic, hope, wishing and praying, anti-hero, risk taker, rule breaker. So it has good cards. Okay, it has good cards, and they all touch on like bigger shadow work themes. This is a shadow work deck. This is also a shadow work deck, which touches on bigger themes. However, it's just a theme, which I appreciate. There's no like BS in between. It's just a theme. So this has different alchemical processes in it. It has different astrology planets and the Black Moon Lilith placement in different, what am I trying to say? In signs. I've been talking for too long. It has some different aspects of Lilith. So it is a little bit Lilith focused in terms of the astrology. I don't really feel the essence of Lilith's story particularly running through this imagery, but in terms of large themes to work with for shadow work that have to do with the experience of being, sacred feminine, all of that, I enjoy this deck. I also enjoy some of the imagery. Some of it I'm like looking at and I'm like, what? But there are other ones where I do enjoy. It's very futuristic. It's a little bit naturey. That's kind of my vibe, if you hadn't noticed. Futuristic nature, etheric nature, otherworldly nature, animals, etc. Skulls, dark spooky shit, water. I mean, that's me in a nutshell. So if I'm gonna do a shadow work thing, this is definitely not the only deck that I use. It may not even be the first one that I reach for, actually, but it definitely is high up on the list, and I would reach for this one over the Lay Vampire every single time. So the Lay Vampire is looking for a new home. That brings us to the end, my loves. That is all of the decks that I have that are looking for new homes, and the decks that I would use out of my library instead for similar reasons. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that I didn't shit too hard on any of your favorite decks. Again, a lot of these are great decks. They aren't the ones for me, or they're good, but I just have ones that I enjoy better. So if you would like to adopt any of these decks and take them home to be your very own, you can find the links to my website and the available decks in the description box below. All of them are shipped with USPS priority mail and tracking, which does make the shipping a little more expensive, but if you buy more than one deck, it's very cost effective. I try to significantly mark them down based off of the original price so that it's worth it, because it is, you're buying secondhand. And yeah, I also love to trade decks. If you would like to trade, please send me an email or a DM on Instagram letting me know what you have up on offer that you're looking to rehome and what you're looking for out of my collection. And we'll talk about kind of my terms around trading. We'll see if we can work something out and make a trade. So again, please do not comment about that below. It gets lost, it gets messy. There's no way for me to directly contact you. So definitely send me an email or DM me on Instagram if that's what you're interested in. With all that being said, my loves, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you again very soon. Take care.